Here we go.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the Zone 6 Town Hall meeting. We are ready to answer your questions and share information you might need to know about crime data, our work in your communities, and our plan to tackle issues in Zone 6. We have a list of questions that some have already submitted, and time permitting, we will take a few more questions once these are answered. We will start by introducing your Zone 6 commanders. Major Peter Reese and Captain Harridan Zinalad. Next, we will introduce members of the department's executive command staff. Chief Rodney Bryant, Assistant Chief Todd Coit, Field Operations Division Commander, Deputy Chief Timothy Peak, Community Services Division Commander, Deputy Chief Celeste Murphy, and here on her behalf is Major Eddie Smith. Criminal Investigations Division Commander, Deputy Chief Charles Hampton. Strategies and Special Projects Division Commander, Deputy Chief Darren Sherbaum. Support Services Division Commander, Deputy Chief Stacy Gibbs. Contingency Operations Division Commander, Deputy Chief Michael O'Connor. Director of Public Affairs, Shada Spikes. Office of Professional Standards, Major Maurice Bates. Chief of Staff, Major Andrea Webster. We want to thank those of you who submitted questions. All of the questions will be read and answered here tonight, unless the issue is a duplicate question or is related to an ongoing investigation. Anything that cannot be answered this evening will be noted, and one of the commanders will follow up with you with a response. If you have something to ask or say during the event, please raise your hand or send the comment to the chat box and we will get to you if time permits. Our goal is to have a helpful and meaningful conversation that provides pertinent information and hopefully responds adequately to your concerns. SPO Tashina Brown with our Public Affairs Unit will begin reading the first question.
These questions are for Chief Bryant. Edward wants to know, what is the greatest challenge that police face in Atlanta today?
Thank you, Edward, for asking this question. I think the greatest challenge that the Atlanta police face today actually has to do with their own mental health. Much like what we see in society as a whole, this is one of the greatest challenges that we face. So being able to manage their mental health and their physical well-being under the restraints that we have on our society as a whole, and for them to have to come to work every single day, managing through that for our department is probably our greatest challenge.
Phyllis and others wants to know, how are you managing the increase in shootings and crime, and how do you plan on making Atlanta safer?
Thank you again for this question. One of the things that we had to do is we had to do a few things. We had to restructure our police department as a whole, increasing our investigations and streamlining our services within, giving us the ability to better investigate what we're seeing. Also, creating a domestic violence unit. One of the things that we clearly recognize is domestic violence tend to be a gateway to other crimes. And by incorporating this unit inside our police department, it gives us the ability to have a more direct contact with people prior to them doing other violent crimes. Additionally, we've strengthened our partnerships with all of our federal and state partners, creating more task force and working better with them to come up with stronger strategies to address what we're seeing inside the city of Atlanta. One of the departments that I think that I have to speak to being a strong partner is the Georgia State Patrol. Georgia State Patrol has done a phenomenal job of coming in and assisting us, and now Fulton County Sheriff's Office. Both of those departments have really come in and done phenomenal work in the strategies that we implement in fighting violent crime. Again, working with the mayor's office to address some of the issues that we are seeing around nuisance properties. Again, nuisance property, we are seeing a level of violence at those locations. We've started to see the benefits of targeting those locations, and those violent crimes are beginning to come down.
Tom wants to know, what are current trends around violent crime in Atlanta over the past month or quarter?
Thank you, Tom, for that question. Over the past quarter, we've seen how violent numbers drop. We're still not in a place where we're comfortable with them, but right now we are teetering just 9%, between 9 and 11% over where we were last year this time. If you recall, probably at the beginning of the year, we were clearly somewhere around the 60%. So even though we're still up, that number is constricting much to the point that I believe that we will have violent crime under where we were last year, and then continue to work aggressively to bring those numbers down even further.
Vic wants to know, are courts a help or a problem?
Vic's courts are always a help. The real question is, could they do better? And it is my contention that the courts could do better. It's a matter of us working more collaboratively with them, as well as the DA's office, to make sure that people who should be in jail go to jail. That repeat offenders who are causing problems in our community stay behind bars. And for those that need help, that we give them the help that they need. But I think, personally, I truly believe that the courts could do a better job, but they're always a help.
Margaret wants to know, have discussions about defunding the police led to officers quitting and remaining officers being less motivated to respond to calls?
I don't think the discussion of defunding the police have led to officers quitting, not here in the city of Atlanta. I think that the ideologies around it may have had some effect on our police department. As far as being less motivated, again, motivation is something that is unique to an individual. It ebbs and flows. It comes up, it goes down. It is the job of this leadership and the citizens of this community to continue to pour into the men and women that serve this department, to keep them motivated. As far as responding to calls, they're mandated to respond to calls. And so there's no defunding or the lack of motivation that will require them to minimize their response to any call.
Mia and others wants to know, how do you plan to fill the shortage of police officers, and what can residents do to help attract and retain officers?
So we're working with the mayor's office and the Atlanta Police Foundation, as well as restructuring what our background in recruitment looks like. I can tell you that the attrition has had to begin to stabilize. We're not seeing as many police officers leave our department as we had last year this time. So that puts us in a good place. Where we are working aggressively is how we bring more people to our department. Right now, nationwide, almost every single large police department is scrambling to replenish their human resources. And so we're working with, like, as I said, with the mayor's office and the Atlanta Police Foundation, that we have the most aggressive background in recruitment office in the country, that we are able to market not just our police department, but our city, so that we can go ahead and start to replenish our resources. We're doing that by taking a look at looking at funding, giving bonuses, and other variables that I think will help us in doing that. But I think we're on the right path. We begin to see those numbers increase as well.
John asked, how does APD feel about the talked about closing of our city jail with no plans as of yet to sell the facility to Fulton County?
Well, as a police department, we have no fight as it relates to the city jail or the county jail. Our job is to take people into custody and just have a place to take them, be it the city jail, the county jail, or the Cobb County jail. It doesn't matter to us what jail we have to deposit individuals in. It's just a matter of the logistics at that point.
Nick asked, What are the alternatives for a public safety complex site besides the Atlanta prison farm? I oppose putting that facility on its site. Can regional shared resources be used? Cobb County just opened a new public safety training center.
Absolutely, good question, Nick. And I understand that there are a lot of opposition to the Atlanta prison farm, but the size of our police department and in partnership with Atlanta Fire Rescue Department, there's no other land within the city that can house the required training that we would need. Even though Cobb County opened up their new location, our department is twice their size. I mean, there's no way that you could operate 2 police academies out of that facility. And so right now, based on the land that we will need, this is probably the best site for us for both Atlanta Fire Rescue and Atlanta Police.
Nick asked, what are the alternatives for a public, next one is from Richard. Is it correct that support and command staff are being deployed to help with field operations? If so, can you give us some specifics?
So Richard, that's a vague question. Most of the command staff work with the field operations daily. If you're asking, are they going out on patrol? That's not the role of our command staff, but we do have them incorporated in dealing with crime every day. This team talks on the phone where we are having conversations about crime and strategies almost every single day, excluding our command staff briefings. We are addressing crimes and deploying resources, as well as actually going out and visually seeing what that looks like. I go to roll calls on a regular basis, and many of the men and women in this room do the exact same thing to make sure, as well as show up on call. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope so. If not, just reach back out to our PIO for a more specific question.
So the next set of questions are going to be for the Zone 6 commander. Zachary and others wants to know, what are the primary causes of crimes in Zone 6? And what are some tips you would offer to residents to reduce the chance of becoming a victim? How has APD increased security in Zone 6? And has APD seen any progress with those efforts? What are the primary causes of crimes?
Good evening, everybody. Major Reese, Zone 6. First, I would like to point out that, and Public Affairs can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have the most participants of any zone yet. So I want to thank the men and women of Zone 6, the residents and the business owners for participating in this conversation. Many of you I know by face or name from our Zoom calls. I enjoy our conversations. They're most always productive. Mr. Ramsden, I see you and I thank you. With that, I want you to know that I look forward to having relationships with additional folks in Zone 6 and working on this concept of creating a safer Atlanta, more specifically Zone 6 together, because communication and working together is a primary component of that. So thank you to everybody that is participating in this meeting. So with that said, to answer some of the questions there, there's different parts there. But what I would say, as we all know, we live, you guys live, and we operate in the Zone 6 space. It is a heavily residential area with definitive commercial areas. And those are all opportunities, unfortunately, where crimes can occur. And they may not be the direct cause, as it could be related to something else. But when you have opportunity like that, that is a consistent crime source that we have to continually fight. And as we work and we live in that community, what are some things that we can do to reduce our ability to become a victim? Be aware of your surroundings, right? Plan your trips accordingly. Make sure if you're getting gas, as we have some slide or crime issues, make sure that you lock your doors, you remove your key fob. Those are some of the elements that most people know, but they tend to forget about or not focus on. And communicate with us, as many of you do, about problems that you see that may not rise to the level of calling 911, because oftentimes the communication that you have with us we can reallocate our resources, not necessarily based on what we've received from 911, but our communication with the community as a whole. So those are some of the things that can help you reduce your chances of being a victim. Though that is not exhaustive, that is continually changing and evolving. How has APD increased security in the Zone 6 space? So specifically Zone 6, we have tried to do some things, maybe they were done before, but we consider them outside the box as it relates to our bicycle crime, bicycle unit. We focused our bike unit. We brought that back on a specific area around Selena Butler Park and some of our Edgewood Bar District, all the way up into Boulevard, which encompasses Old Fourth Ward, which is what we'll address down here in one of these other questions. But those are the types of things that we try and strive to do. As crime shifts, we try to shift with it. And oftentimes we have to conduct things like undercover operations. We partner with our license and permits unit. We'll get into some of that. We request other assets within the City of Atlanta Police Department, because what folks often forget is Zone 6 is not just responsible for Zone 6. There are many other components of the Atlanta Police Department that come and help us. And some of them are sitting at this table and they'll eventually have something to say about that. But we work as a team. The chief has mentioned in many of his talks about how we can allocate resources from the department, whether it's our HIT team, our Apex unit, and they can focus on the areas in question. So I hope that answers some of what was discussed there in Zone 1. Questions?
Chris wants to know, I also have a business too on the Beltline off Magruder Street. I was mugged on election night 2020, walking from Tube to my home. What is the status of crime in Old Fourth Ward and Inman Park, and how is it being addressed? Thank you for what you do to protect them.
Chris, thank you for the thank you. And as you're aware, obviously probably by your question, we are challenged somewhat in the Old Fourth Ward. We have had some recent violent crime issues, but what we do to address that is what I talked about here previously. But more specifically, we have used our Apex unit, which is our street crime level of violent crime proactive unit. We've added them into the area. They coordinate with our crime suppression unit, as well as some of our other quality of life units in Zone 6. And we focus on that area, as well as calling in our gang unit, because oftentimes the gang unit has information and intelligence that can be linked together, and then therefore we can take some action on that. So we work together, we bring in different resources, and we focus on the area in general. And then ultimately, as our investigations relate to what the issue is, we try and eradicate essentially that problem from that area. It's not perfect. We continually battle and we continually work with the community there to try and relieve some of those issues, specifically in that Old Fourth Ward neighborhood.
Myron asks, are you planning on adding additional patrols in the East Atlanta Village? I have often heard you're too busy policing Edgewood.
Good evening, everybody. Captain Zone 6, Assistant to Major Reese. Thank you for that question, Myron. It's unfortunate that you would hear something like that, but we constantly have patrols in the East Atlanta Village, not just in-house with Zone 6 assets, but we lean heavily on our partners like our Special Operations Sections, Apex for street level narcotics enforcement, that sort of thing. It's never an issue of being too busy. It's not a practice of not addressing issues in all of our neighborhoods in Zone 6. Needless to say, not excluding East Atlanta Village. So we constantly plan, we constantly have discussions about different issues that might arise, and we're continually poring over crime statistics that affect not just the East Atlanta Village, but the entire zone.
Kay wants to know, I would like to know more about Zone 6 current staffing.
Sure, Major Reese again, Zone 6. Kay, I appreciate that question. You and I have conversations often. I wish you could be on this meeting unless you snuck in. I know you had some other things to attend to. Zone 6 staffing is where, let me say this, I could always use additional officers. I think anybody could, right? We know we are challenged with some of those aspects, but Zone 6 has the ability to do what we are responsible to do, and that is answer 911 calls and be proactive in spaces that we need to be. We have the ability to have a bike unit, a quality of life unit, a crime suppression unit, as well as our staffing for our 911 response. So, with that said, we're functioning exceptionally well in Zone 6, I believe. Can we do better? Of course we can. And that's why we strive to have conversations with all of you on this call to try and improve on that.
Okay, so I'll break this one down, but Brian B. and others wants to know specifically, what have you done to identify, arrest, and charge the criminals who fired multiple gunshots from a speeding car on East Morningside Drive on the 22nd of June of this year? Was a license plate reader camera that should have captured their plate effective? And if not, why not? And then I'll go.
Okay, Major Reese, Zone 6. So this question here is pretty specific. And in this case, we had two cars traveling down Morningside Drive. One car was firing at the other car. And as you stated in there, the license plate reader was instrumental in our investigation. Now, what I will say is the follow-up there, if not, why not? It was, but what I could tell you is that oftentimes license plate readers are not always facing the right way. So those are sometimes the challenges that we have to deal with. But in this specific incident, it was successful and it led to an investigative step that allowed us to identify the vehicle in question. Now, what I will point out is that the victim, or perceived victim in this case, never came forward. With that said, it's still illegal in the city of Atlanta to fire a firearm, right? So we still have a crime, we still have an investigation that will move forward. So with that, we've had other technological investigation aspects of this. The components of that are still out, for lack of a better term, and we're waiting on some definitive answers before we're able to make any type of a specific arrest in this case. But what I will tell you is that we are working on it, we won't stop working on it, and hopefully there'll be a good resolution to it at the end. But in the meantime, to follow up at the last question, what specific efforts have we taken to prevent crime, this type of crime from happening? Is we've increased our directed patrols. I know you probably feel like you hear that a lot, but the directed patrol is very, very good in the sense that it can not only prevent folks from partaking in this type of criminal activity, but it also lets the community understand that we know this is a problem and we're going to address it and focus on that. So we've increased our directed patrols. We have our crime suppression unit, which is a proactive unit component of Zone 6 that we can allocate to specific areas as we have issues. And then we can continue to focus on some of the technological investigative elements that we have in that area.
So the next set of questions are for FOD, Deputy Chief Timothy Peak. The Field Operations Division, FOD, is a uniform patrol force of the city. Officers patrol the city streets, answer calls for service, and work with the community to solve trending problems. FOD consists of 6 geographic patrol zones and the night commander, who is the ranking supervisor during late night shifts. Marla and others wants to know, how can neighborhood associations, concerned residents, advocate for you to gain the support you need from the city? How can we support our neighborhood officers?
So good evening again, it's Deputy Chief Timothy Peoples, the Field Operations Division for the Atlanta Police Department. Thank you for joining in with us, and thank you for allowing us to serve you as we continue to create a safer Atlanta for our citizens. Marla, in regards to your question, what I would actually say is that the Atlanta Police Department, we are supported by the mayor and administration, as well as the Atlanta City Council. But what we can do actually to increase our effectiveness is to be more focused on specific initiatives as we try to continue to grow partnerships with the community, as well as ensuring that we do all that we can to get together in different aspects, such as neighborhood patrols and different things, and set those particular points where we meet and partner together, that we're able to really and truly identify the focus of what each and every neighborhood might need. Zone 6 is a very diverse community, so what works in one neighborhood might be a little different than what we need for the other. The other thing that I would also certainly encourage as we continue to grow support is for the community to certainly adopt the precinct, work closely with our officers, but not just that, but to also look outside in partnership and support us through the Atlanta Police Foundation. There are so many different things that are going on within the city of Atlanta that quite frankly, it's a burden on the city as a government. But as we partner with the Atlanta Police Foundation, we're able to gain more support and to identify and accomplish some of the things that we need for our agency to be better and for our communities to be safer.
Stuart and Emmanuel wants to know, any safety recommendations for residents? What can residents and business owners do to reduce crime?
So thanks, Stuart and Emmanuel. One of the things, if you recall, Major Reese spoke a little while ago, some of the things that we need to do to be effective for reducing requirements to actually look at some of our own habits and to do things a little differently. We certainly, and I know people really kind of cringe when they hear it, but one of the things that we constantly push out is the clean car campaign. So that we look at what we're doing from a habitual standpoint to change those things so that we're not leaving important things inside of vehicles, ensuring that when we're out and about that we are being a little bit smarter about where we're parking, what we're doing, actually planning for the trips that we're making as we're moving throughout the city. When we do things like that, we see crime start to decrease. Another thing that we have, which is also represented, and I know they get an opportunity to speak with our community services division, but each resident, if you have a home or a business, you have the opportunity of requesting our CSD teams to come out and conduct CEPTED assessments of your property, which is really crime prevention through environmental design. What does your home look like? Do you have shrubs that are too high? Can you use better lighting? What is it that we can do for that actual area to make it better to where people can see what's going on, and ultimately by making those changes, you can reduce the crime of what's going on in that footprint. So those are all things that we do, but ultimately, again, it becomes by changing our habits of what we're doing so that we don't continue to make the mistakes that we make continuously.
Emmanuel asks, when is it appropriate to call 911 versus 311 PAD or other departments?
So Emmanuel, great question again. What I will say is if you need police services, 911 is the number that we want you to call. If there's something of an emergency standpoint you need, and let's say this, there may be some things that you think may not rise to the level of emergency, but if you need a uniform response to come out and deal with an issue, then we want that call to come through 911. Pre-arrest diversion or police and alternative diversions now, which is the new name, that's great for 311 and other city services that are not needed for an immediate response, such as code enforcement and other issues where we can come out and do an assessment on something down the road. But if you need police presence, please call 911 so that we can come out. We want to ensure that that call comes through 911, and we ask that you don't call the precinct, call 911, because that gives us the availability of tracking that call, following up, and ensuring that whatever that issue is, we were able to successfully handle it, or that gives us a way to follow up to ensure that it's not falling by the wayside.
Emmanuel asks, what can Ponce Highland do to help promote APD's Clean Car campaign? We already post reminders on our Neighborhood Watch Facebook page. We remind people at our monthly neighborhood meetings, etc. What can we do for non-residents that don't know any better? Signs on the street or in business doors, what works?
So thanks, Emmanuel. What I will actually say is all of the above, and thank you for taking the proactive means to deal with the Neighborhood Watch and Facebook. We recognize that social media is a great way to reach people, but there are still a group that we miss out when they're not connected to our inner city communities. What I would also say is perhaps work with all of your businesses, ensuring that they have adequate sign in their windows, as you stated, as well as the parking lots, and ensuring that it's strategic. Again, on some of these issues, although we're missing them, if we can get to that front end and strategically set those signs in places to where they capture the attention of people that are coming into the parking lots, parking on the streets, and just really and truly sharing that word through the networks of our friends, we believe that we can begin to reach other people. Of course, our public affairs unit is also constantly pushing out information. So I would suggest that everyone friend our Facebook pages, our Instagram pages, and all of those other avenues of social media, so that not only just the residents are there, but share it with all of your friends, your families throughout. It matters not if they're in Atlanta, Cobb County, or even outside of the state of Georgia. We want to share what's happening with Atlanta and reach as many people as we can.
The next set of questions are for CID with Deputy Chief Charles Hampton. The Criminal Investigations Division, CID, consists of investigative units whose primary responsibility is to investigate and follow up on crimes committed against persons or property in the city of Atlanta. Edward and others wants to know what is being done to curtail the violent crime around nightclubs, bars, and some restaurants.
Good evening. Currently, licensing permits was restructured. So it used to fall under the Criminal Investigation Division. Now it is housed under the Community Service Division. One of the reasons that was done is to provide them to be aligned with code enforcement, to also be a kind of a force multiplier. And so part of our summer plan is that we allocate additional resources where they go around to a lot of these problematic locations that we have historical problems, and to make sure that they are doing what they say they're supposed to do, abide by some of the ordinances. And so we are doing undercover details with also some of our state partners. And then Major Reese and his team with their crime suppression units also provide some type of patrol in those areas.
Terry and Michael ask, what are the plans to handle drug, prostitution, gangs, negative activity in neighborhoods like the Boulevard Corridor and Little Five Points? Boulevard Corridor as well as the Boulevard Pocket Parks.
So again, as when we see from the Criminal Investigation Division, when we see spikes and incidents arise in those areas, especially involving gangs, our Criminal Intelligence Unit play a vital role in that. We also partner with community supervision. We try to identify individuals who are on active probation and parole. We do details to try if those individuals are wanted. We partner also with our fugitive units who are part of the special enforcement sections, and try to, once again, we use undercover resources to identify the incidents in those areas, the crime, and get just really proactively work hard to try to bring some type of level of order in that corridor.
Leslie asks, what can we or AP do to A, validate that late clubs are disproportionately part of the problem with shooting violence? And then B, can APD actively be present at more of these clubs late in the night to dissuade violence?
Okay. So we ask that if you see, and I know one of the follow-up questions is what can you do? We ask that you call 911. As Chief Pete mentioned before, 911 allows us the ability to track these calls and the problematic clubs. So we definitely are following up with our aggravated assault unit, as Chief Brian alluded to before. We combine those investigators. We also have within that our gun assault team to actively and follow up on these individuals that are shooting around some of these clubs. This is also feeds into the calls of service as well as some of these shooting and violence. Also, we work with the solicitor's office to try to have them then go after them for a nuisance violation. So I know those are a couple of questions are coming forward, but all of that plays a hand. So we continue to ask you to call 911, but we also, when we have this level of violence and shooting around these establishments, we pull the calls for service and send that information over to the solicitor's office so they also can actively go after these establishments.
Kyle asks, what is required to classify a business as a nuisance property? How do we file a complaint?
So the city is still working through, there are subcommittee meetings that we work with other entities within the city of Atlanta. We are in the process of coming up with the language to identify the ordinance for a nuisance property. But again, it's calling 911. That's how we track it. That is one of the key components of filing a nuisance petition against these establishments, is looking at their calls of service in addition to the level of violence that's happening around those businesses.
Kyle and Camille adds, certain businesses like Onyx Club routinely violate the city's noise ordinance. When APD officers are not responsive to resolving noise complaints, what steps should residents take?
Major Reese Zone 6. I will point out, it's semantics, but Onyx is in Zone 2. But nonetheless, the concept of what is occurring there is also happening in Zone 6 at other clubs. I will say that. What can you do to resolve noise complaints that you feel are not effectively being dealt with? And we've had this issue. We've talked with the folks specifically in an area over around Ansley. What I would tell you is that if it is not getting handled, let me know, right? Most people have my email address. It's on the website. If you don't, or my phone number. But I would also suggest that you call a supervisor, call 911 back and request a supervisor. And they have to respond to the scene or to the incident or have a conversation with you. And they can take the steps necessary to deal with the situation of the noise ordinance not being effectively dealt with, or they can explain the rules and regulations as set forth in our ordinances, why the person or business is in compliance or not. And then we can effectively deal with it from that point on. So that's what I would suggest. Always call a supervisor. If you feel that the effort and the steps that the officer took are not reasonable or not correct, call a supervisor so we can have a discussion and get to the bottom of it.
James wants to know, what are you doing to help license and permits unit enforce ordinances on alcohol licensing, and how many Zone 6 officers have received additional training on alcohol licensing enforcement?
James, good question. Thank you, Major Reese Zone 6. So what is Zone 6 specifically doing? And first I'll answer the second part of the question. So we've very recently had about 5 or 6 officers specifically trained as it relates to license and permitting ordinances and the effective, our ability to affect those citations on these businesses. So we are partnering consistently with the license and permits unit on whether it's a detail or just in conversation or communication as it relates to any citations that we give to some of these businesses, specifically around the alcohol licensing. We also partner with the license and permits unit as it relates to an undercover capacity, because most times those are the most effective way of dealing with some of these establishments that continually violate Chapter 10 of the City of Atlanta ordinances. So we partner with them very consistently, multiple times a month, even a week, depending on what's going on. And we continually try and get our late shift officers into our morning watch officers, specific training, which they have successfully done. And we're going to continue to work on getting that the more and more time that we have to get the training going. So that's what Zone 6 is doing, to partner with license and permits.
The next set of questions are for CSD. And Deputy Chief Celeste Murphy's absence, we have Major Eddie Smith here that will be answering following questions. The Community Services Division, CSD, encompasses units that are directly responsible for coordinating and facilitating community-oriented policing principles, Atlanta Airport, police functions, and special operations. Lynn and others ask, why are traffic rules not being enforced in certain areas? What can be done to deter speeding and traffic in certain neighborhoods like Cross Street, Inman Park, Morningside, East Atlanta Village, Bouldercrest, Flat Shoals, Split, and Cheshire Bridge Road? Can we get directed patrols?
First of all, hello, everybody. I'm Major Eddie Smith, Special Operations. First of all, Special Operations, we have several traffic enforcement focused units, especially dealing with our motor unit and our high intensity traffic unit. These units probably make more traffic stops than anybody in the city. But when it comes to them making those stops, they do have discretion on how far they're going to take that after their initial stop. I reach out to Major Reese and Captain Line weekly, every Sunday night without failure. And that I seek what's going to be the best possible location for special operation to assist Zone 6 with fighting their crime issue, especially centering around property crime, dealing with vehicle break-ins and auto theft. I'm mandated, I have 2 officers in that, 2 motor units in that area weekly, every day for their doing their tour of duty, and also rotate a high-intensity traffic unit within that area daily, doing their tour of duty. For directed patrols, you can email me directly, and I can add that information onto our list of locations that Captain Townhall forwarded me every Monday morning. It's a long list. I cannot forget my Matter Patrol. They in Zone 6 3 days a week. We out there at Selena Butler Park at least one day, and we out at Old 4th Ward an additional day. And then the other 3 days they out in Zone 5. And I do have my motor unit. We conduct traffic details with DeKalb County along the Zone 6 and the DeKalb County border, where we do that detail once a month. And we also have a high-intensity traffic unit. They conduct their detail again with DeKalb County high-intensity traffic unit bi-monthly along the I-20 corridor, back down to Moreland Avenue, started back into DeKalb County. So we have a lot of resources that we place in the Zone 6. But feel free to reach out to me. We can add some of these locations directly onto our directed patrol locations going forward.
Sarah asks, is there a possibility of submitting documentation to City of Atlanta planning, transportation engineers regarding number of stop signs, speeding, accident reports along flat shoals in East Atlanta as an effort to add additional traffic calming measures?
Yes, we've done this several times before in the past. We've done traffic studies along Duncan Holloway, we've done along ML King, and also dealing with the reduction of speed, the speed limits in the city. You have to reach out to Atlanta Department of ADOT, and then they will reach out to us for the traffic studies. And then from that point, they'll take that information, they can determine what traffic device will be appropriate for their location. But we do assist in that.
Boone asks, can we report squatting on a property?
Yes, reach out to 311 and you can leave a message, or you can email the cops unit, which they'll forward that over to the whole team. And the whole team will verify that information. And once it's verified, at that time, we'll go out to the location. They'll offer that individual services if they own the property. If they don't take it, we cannot force them to take the city services. And at that time, then the owner can start with criminal steps going forward, starting with criminal trespass at that point.
Allison and others ask, what plans are in place to stop the street racing? How successful have the street racing details been?
The street racing details is a challenge. Special operation, we love it. I gave that detail over to my hit unit a few months ago, because we're talking about the most passionate unit when it comes to traffic enforcement probably in the department. First thing that I did as the commander, I reached out to other departments in the city for comparables to see what they're doing and what's successful and what's not working and what could I bring back to the city. And one thing that I did find out that we had to have our own in-house intelligence. And I got one of the best pilots in the world is Officer Treadwell. He not only is he a pilot, but he does a great job with following the intelligence. And then the intelligence is very important. It allowed us to get in positions prior to these street races before they start to gather up. We're able to force them outside the city. We share that information with other departments. And the biggest part of this entail is that prior to them coming to the city, we able to go to their homes, knock on the door and say, we know what you're gonna do this weekend. So that's the big thing. And we also able to levy charges from that time that we have in the past. But it's also evolving. I don't think we're gonna be able to get out of this space. We shouldn't. So we're gonna continue to handle this responsibility. But we do ask the community to always reach out. We need to know in real time, but we need to respond to some other locations. I cannot thank our partners, especially State Patrol, Georgia State Patrol. We had the Fulton County Sheriffs. We even had Georgia State Police. The unit, I couldn't believe it, but we had a lot of help along with South Fulton County PD, DeKalb County PD, and also we share intelligence between all the departments. We're gonna be in that space for a while. We're gonna have to continue to monitor it going forward.
Kay and David ask, what changes has APD made to better address the issues surrounding our homeless population, panhandlers, and mentally impaired individuals?
Okay, that's good. That's gonna be another great question. That's gonna come basically dealing with cops, our whole team. We have to respond to these locations constantly. Not only whether it's gonna be known locations or locations that we receive through 311 or through 911. We have to continue to respond, and when we do, we have to offer services. And if these individuals doesn't take it, we cannot force them to take city services. But what we can do is monitor their mental state at that time, making sure that they're not going to threaten themselves or they're going to threaten others. And at that point, then we'll call Grady EMS in to do an evaluation on the scene.
Kay asks, are you seeing tangible and measurable successes with the pre-arrest diversion program?
With that, we're still looking into that. Once we recommend the individual into the program, we haven't followed up to see exactly where we are, but I can check in and I can have that information, real-time information on where we are with the program.
Randall and Bonnie want to know, can we make loud exhaust on cars, motorcycles illegal in the city?
It's already is. It's 40-8-71. We wrote motors, especially hit. That's one of our main charges doing this illegal racing detail. We wrote the well over 100 charges. That's also led to some impounds and some arrests. It's something that we need to enforce throughout all watches throughout the city in order to get that behavior to change. But we've been writing it for a while, and we haven't wrote it in 3 weeks because we've seen a decrease in the activity in the city.
So the next set of questions are for COD. In the absence of Deputy Chief Michael O'Connor, Deputy Chief Darren Shearbaum will be answering the next set of questions. The Contingency Operations Division, or COD, is responsible for researching, developing, planning, and implementing a strategic force for all major events in the city of Atlanta. This includes parades, protests, marches, rallies, large gathering permits, sporting and entertainment venues. The division's responsibility is to ensure everyone involved in the event is safe. So Big wants to know, are plate readers making a difference identifying lawbreakers and deterring crime? How can we get a license plate reader installed in a specific area? Do the cameras only record when a license, do the cameras only record when given a license plate number to look for? And are the cameras even working?
Good evening, Vic. This is Darren Shearbaum, Deputy Chief for Strategy Special Projects. Again, thank you and everyone that joined us this evening. It is certainly encouraging for us as a police department to see this level of community engagement. License plate readers are an important tool in our crime fighting mission. It is one of many of the technology tools that we have in our umbrella throughout the city. License plate readers will work in various ways. We are always balancing the privacy of our citizens while using the tools to identify those that are committing crimes, be it violent crimes or property crimes in the area. We work closely with our tactical crime analysis unit to determine where license plate readers should be deployed. We have both those that are static in nature and those that can be mobile throughout the city. Certain council members also work to fund license plate readers in their districts, and as well certain community groups work with the Atlanta Police Foundation for additional license plate readers where there may be interest of partnering with the community and the Police Foundation to deploy them. Each day we check to determine what cameras may be down or what those that may need to have maintenance done to ensure they are working whenever we turn to them. This is why you see during your neighborhood watch training are asking to capture the tag, because the license plate reader is key in preventing crime and is very key in identifying those that are committing offenses in our neighborhood.
Jackie wants to know, what can be done immediately to assist with our response times? Our police are understaffed and the 911 dispatch is oftentimes busy.
Thank you, Jackie. This is a very good question. There's a number of things that can be done to assist us to ensure we have the right resources in the proper areas to shorten our response times. It's been said many times by The other deputy chiefs, the importance of your 911 call. Your 911 call reporting suspicious activity, crimes that occurred, helps those at this table place units in the neighborhoods where we know we have individuals up to no good. So when your call does come in, we can get there much more quickly. Secondly, is answering the questions of the 911 dispatcher. The 911 dispatcher is asking certain questions to determine if we send the right resources at the right response rate. So taking the time to answer those questions, remain on the line, will assist to ensure that you receive the right resources at the right response time. When you do encounter the recording at the 911 center that the call takers are busy, that can be very frustrating, especially if reporting a critical emergency. The important thing is do not hang up. Those situations tend to occur when a high-profile emergency is occurring in the city, such as a fire or a car accident that has multiple individuals reporting the same incident. If you hang up, the place you were in the line will remain, and it will the line will continue to hold your hung up call until we can get to it to attempt to answer your call, then try to call you back. So remain on the call. By hanging up and dialing again, you're just creating a longer line for the call takers to mitigate to get to your emergency.
Okay, so the next set of questions are for SSD and will be answered by Deputy Chief Shearbon. SSD, which is the Strategy and Special Projects Division, SSP, is responsible for coordinating and facilitating the department's strategic crime fighting initiatives and implementing new technologies and projects. The division consists of planning and research accreditation, staff inspections, crime analysis, open records, and the Atlanta Police Leadership Institute, known as APLI. Ronald and Crystal wants to know, when will timely crime data like crime maps and GIS info be made available to residents?
Thank you. The good news is that is available now. If you will look at the graphic on your screen, this is an example of the recently restored crime maps that were placed up. Those went offline temporarily as we implemented a new computer-aided dispatch system as well as a report management system. Those had to be rebuilt, and I want to thank the Public Affairs Unit for lending their talent to that effort. You can access the map that you're seeing now by going to our website, www.atlantapd.org, going to the community section, and then going to the crime statistics tab. You will be able to look at crime statistics just for your specific neighborhood, your NPU, or your beat, or your zone. We ask that you actually use this information to assist us in our crime fighting mission. If you see an area where burglaries may be occurring, we ask that that be distributed, the neighborhood watch be alerted, and you assist us in looking for suspicious vehicles, suspicious persons. And if you see something, say something by calling 911. So use the information to assist us in our crime fighting effort. And if you have any questions or any difficulties locating this, we will assist you through our Public Affairs Unit of finding it. And I will say for the timeliness, this is updated each hour. So we try to keep it as current as we can to assist you in your efforts to partner with us in your neighborhood.
Dorothy and others wants to know, are there any updates on many precincts getting added in Zone 6, specifically on North Avenue, Little Five Points, and Old Fourth Ward?
Yes, Dorothy, right now we're assessing and we're in a continual state of assessment of where our mini precincts should be. Currently in Zone 6, we have mini precincts on Mason Avenue, as well as the Atlanta Medical Center on Boulevard. At one time, we were assessing a location on North Avenue. It was deemed not to be suitable. The technology that would have to be installed in that facility to support our officers, the location could not support it. We will continue to be looking to see where mini precincts may go. Our effort is to ensure our officers spend as much time in the neighborhoods, in their patrols as they can, whether it be on foot, bicycle, or car, and equipping them with the technology that they can carry with them to minimize the time they may have to be in any precincts.
And the next question is for our Public Affairs Unit, and they will be answered by our Director, Shada Spikes. The House of Ramirez wants to know, may I interview officers on my podcast? I want to tell their experience during COVID so folks see all men and women in uniform are human.
Hey, this is Sergeant John Chafee with the Public Affairs Unit. I'm going to take that question. So we definitely appreciate your interest in doing something like this. What I would suggest and what we would need from you is to reach out to our unit, kind of write up a proposal about what you want to do, what that might look like, and email that to us. Our email address is apdpublic-affairs@atlantaga.gov, or you can send it to me. My email is jchafee, that's JCHAF like Frank, EE, @atlantagA.gov, and just send us the proposal. We're going to want to talk with you about that.
Now that our previously submitted questions have been responded to, we will address questions that have been provided through the chat box. Please be advised, we have received a number of questions, and we will get through them as time permits.
Good evening, everyone. This is Shanta Spikes, Director of Public Affairs for the City of Atlanta Police Department. Some of the questions that are in the chat, the answers have already been provided. However, as he said, we will try to get to as many of these questions as possible. The first question is related to our restaurants operating as clubs. The question is regard to when alcohol is served into the early morning, problems happen that disturb the quality of life. What should we do about this? What legislation is required? Chief Ryan, would you like to take that question?
Absolutely. So currently, if you're seeing something happen during those hours, again, as it's been stated previously, don't hesitate to call 911 and we'll respond out. As it relates to legislation, the city council is also working aggressively on ways to come up with, to minimize this loophole that we see. And as it relates to these nightclubs operating, as these restaurants operating as nightclubs. So I think that the efforts with the Atlanta Police, the mayor's office, and the city council are working aggressively to try to shore this up where we recognize there's a problem.
Next question. Would the city be better off if the state provided our cities, counties, etc., with centralized training so that it would not cost us so much when an officer leaves the APD for a nearby department?
The training that the state provide and what we provide at the city of Atlanta is completely different. The state only requires a very minimal number of training hours for their police officers. The city of Atlanta, we train our police officers well over 1,400 hours. So our standards are much higher than what the states require. And our training is unique compared to what you would find in smaller cities. So I don't think that that would be a wise strategy for the state to take over training.
If a member of Zone 6 or any of the other zones in the community add flock cameras, who should they contact to provide that data to APD?
Right now, you can contact our COD, our Community Contingency Operation Division, but also contact our strategists and special projects. They work hand in hand as it relates to the cameras. And you can also reach out to the Atlanta Police Foundation. All three entities really work hand in hand on coming up with the best new technology as it relates to cameras.
How difficult of a process is it to ask for GBI to support in investigations and support to combat gang and drug activity?
It's not difficult at all. The GBI, and I apologize that I have left them out of many of the thanks and accolades. The GBI works with our department. They're a strong partner as well. If Vic Reynolds is on, I apologize because the GBI does a phenomenal job working with us as well, especially in the area of gang task force.
Morningside is primarily in Zone 6. Properties north of Cheshire Bridge, the Manchester area, are part of Morningside, but are in Zone 2. Cheshire Bridge is the border between Zone 6 and Zone 2 in Morningside. So we've received several questions regarding, can these two areas be a part of just one zone? The Morningside area and Cheshire Bridge.
Well, I can't answer that. We do an analysis, a beat and workload analysis every so many years. This question has come up on, can we do one relatively soon? As we look at how we divide a zone, so many different variables go into it: geographical boundaries, natural boundaries, neighborhood boundaries, and as well as a workload itself. So, and in our next analysis, one of the things we have to do is to just take a look at how we, because we've done it before where we had to restructure a zone just for this particular reason. We'll have to look at it in our next analysis and see if we can make it fit.
On bottle boys, we are not seeing the APD doing what the chief described. We call 911 when it's in the middle of the street and abusive, and no police show up. How can we address that?
Well, I can assure you that when you call 911, have an understanding that we have to prioritize the type of calls that we're responding to. I recognize that there may be times that our officers may be tied up and responding to the water sales as a low priority. But we also have a strategy in place working with our community services division, as well as a Fulton County Sheriff's Office, where we're deploying them differently and addressing them more strategically as it relates to water sales.
And I also want to make note that some of the questions we're receiving are not related to Zone 6. We will answer those questions directly, but I will not be asking those questions aloud. When can the residents be considered? Actually, that's a Zone 1, excuse me. How are the results of the mayor's anti-crime committee being implemented?
That committee just concluded their recommendation. So we're actually still working through some of those to see what we can, how they can better service the city of Atlanta as a whole. I'll tell you this, and I thought, and I guess this is as good a time as any to speak about this town hall as a whole. One of the things that we were specific about is the law enforcement centric or being specific about what we do, law enforcement. What came out of that violent task force was the ability to bring in non-law enforcement to better fight crime. And I think that as we deploy those strategies, that will help us combat crime even more.
Next question, how do you allocate tax breaks for officers who live in Atlanta neighborhoods? What Zone 6 neighborhoods qualify?
Oh, tax breaks. Well, that's a great question. That's something that you probably want to take to our legislation on, which will be our city council, and let them have that conversation. I wish that that is something that I do support, but that's outside of my pay grade.
When can a local precinct be added to the old 4th Ward neighborhood to deal with problems on Boulevard and surrounding streets?
I think that was answered by Chief Shearbrom, where we continue to do assessment, as well as we continue to replenish our resources, we allocate resources throughout our department.
This is another question regarding the Zone 2, Zone 6. Any chance that all of Piedmont Heights can be assigned to Zone 6 or Zone 2 instead of being split between the two?
Once again, we have to put that into an assessment and see how the call volume, as well as what those boundaries may be to address that type of response or to shore that up. But we've done it before. It continues to change every so often, depending on the workload.
All right, I'm still going through questions, and a lot of the questions we've already answered. It says that, let me see, hold on. So Chief, I can tell you while I go through some more of these questions that we do have members of City Council who are on. I know that Andre Dickens joined us, Howard Shook, and Matt Westmoreland.
I know that we have a hard 7:30 stop on this, and I'll take, I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our city council members, Andre Dickens and Matt Westmoreland. And Councilman Shook, I'm sorry, I didn't know he was on, and thank them for joining. At this time, I think that it's important that we go ahead and open their lines up. And if there's something that they would like to say, by all means do so that we can make sure that we get them before we get to our hard stop.
Howard Shook, if you can raise your hand. I know that you stated that you wanted to speak to you wanted to raise a question and speak to all of our citizens who are on. But we would need you to raise your hand, Councilman Shook. I know that Councilman Dickens said he would not be able to stay on for the town hall in its entirety. If you are on, can you raise your hand? Councilman Westmoreland, if you are on and you would like to speak, please raise your hand.
Sure. This is Matt Westmoreland. Appreciate it. To everyone, just a quick word. I know that Councilman Dickens and Shook were both on the line earlier. I don't know if they're still here or not, but on behalf of them, as well as my colleague Jennifer Ide, who is out with a family emergency this evening, I wanted to thank everyone for joining this evening's conversation. I want to thank Chief Bryant and the command staff for the questions that you've answered and the work that you and the men and women of the police department do day in and day out. I will add my email address and my cell phone number to the chat in a second. So if there's anything I can ever do for any of the residents who are on the line as one of your 3 citywide representatives, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. As a resident of Midtown who lives at 10th and Piedmont and went to Grady High School, frankly, I know the events of this morning are top of mind for many folks who are on the call, as are the incidents that have taken place over the last several weeks and months. And I want to thank the chief and the team for all that you and your teammates are doing on behalf of the city. And if I can ever help from City Hall, don't ever hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Councilman Westmoreland. Are there any other questions from the members of our audience?
You know, I will make one more comment because I know someone just asked about tax breaks. I chair our Community Development and Human Services Committee, which oversees a lot of the work around housing affordability and economic development and workforce development. And in January, we passed a $100 million housing opportunity bond. And part of the conversation that we've had internally is how we can direct some of those dollars to help increase the percentage of police officers who live in our communities, Atlanta Public Schools teachers. I am a former APS teacher. How we can help increase the number of public servants, frankly, who are living in the communities in which they serve. And so whether that's through dollars like the housing bond that we passed in January, to provide a tax break is something that would require us to go to the state and have a conversation with members of the Atlanta delegation and frankly, leadership in the State House and State Senate, since those are state issues in terms of how we can change people's taxes. But we do have the ability to use various levers at the city level and various city resources. And I know that there are several instances where there have been sort of more pilot opportunities for us to help house officers in our neighborhoods, and I'm fully supportive of us figuring out how we can grow that program in the months and years ahead.
Thank you, Councilman Westmoreland. If anyone who's in the audience has a question, we ask that you raise your hand. We will call on you, then we will unmute you and allow you to ask your question. Please raise your hand now if you have a question. I think Chief wants to address this person. If we see none, if our hearts and minds are clear, we will turn it back over to our Chief, Rodney Bryant, to close out today's town hall for Zone 6.
Thank you so much, Zone 6. I see our hand. Go ahead.
Lance,
This is Lance. I'm Orchid. I'm Councilmember Ide's Chief of Staff, and I just wanted you to know that we are here. Both Kent Strickland and I from the office are on. I would ask that you please keep Councilmember Ide and her family in your prayers as they are facing a pretty serious medical emergency. And it's a rough time today for her. She asked me to thank both Major Sensor, Major Reese, and APD for putting this on for us. It's really a great thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Now we'll go to House of Ramirez.
Oh, hey guys, I don't have a question. Let me bring my hand down. I just want to thank everyone for everything that they do. Oop, let me bring it down. I appreciate everything that everybody does. It's a team effort. You know, it takes the community as well as you guys to do what we do to keep our city safe. So I just wanted to thank you guys.
Thank you, House of Ramirez. We'll now turn it over to Chief Bryant if there are no other questions.
Again, thank you all for taking the time to be a part of this town hall. As the House of Ramirez stated, for us to be better, for us to address public safety in our city, it takes us all to do it. We're just the enforcement piece of this, but it takes us all, each and every one of you, our continuous communication where we make each other better and enlighten ourselves to things that we may miss. And so thank you for taking this time to do this. I thought that if I'm not mistaken, this may also be the most questions that we've gotten from a community as well. So thank you, East Atlanta Zone 6, for all that you do and your continued partnership and support.
All right, now we will turn it over to our Zone 6 commanders if they would like to provide a closing statement or information on how to reach them.
Sure. Well, as the chief said, I want to thank everybody. And we're setting records here in Zone 6, okay? The most questions, the most participants. This is what we're going to continue to do in Zone 6. You guys, majority of you know my communication pieces, whether it's my phone number or my email. If you don't, reach out to your MPU chairs. They most definitely have it. Or if you need, it's on the website. I'm here. I'm very open to talk to at any time of the day and night. I have a child, 3 children at home. I have a 4-month-old, 3, and an 8-year-old. So I very rarely sleep. If you need something, please let me know. And then again, thank you. And I look forward to continued and evolving communication with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Zenelai, Zone 6. To echo the chief and Major Reese, it's a team effort, and we are committed to working with all of our community members in Zone 6. And we appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue and back and forth questions. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night.